Hi, okay. Thank you so much, Janessa. So hi everyone. Hi everyone again. Welcome to the final RIC commercialization workshop. Today we're reviewing a topic that basically builds on everything that we've gone through in the last few weeks, with a view on how to commercialize, how commercialization benefits society. So we're going to dig into that. For many, the answer to this is a little bit obvious, in that commercializing research and innovation projects brings about better jobs, more opportunities for different groups. So for different communities that are in rural locations, women, people with disabilities, and then people within those rural locations as well. It also stimulates the economy and could mean a great difference for a community in general, in terms of children staying in school, them having better grades overall, national infrastructure being expanded and improved, scientific research that creates breakthroughs based on the local environment, and the list goes on. Today, we're going through 7 items over the next hour, and we'll close the session off today with time for questions. So we're starting with the welcome, and then that's going to be a welcome to today, and then also the project itself. And then looking at a time to pause and reflect on why we're here today. And then understanding where does impact within the realm of commercialization matter. And then going into the areas of impact themselves, because those are important to understand the different categories that we can use. Then we'll look at a few examples of social impact metrics on top of the discussion of the areas of impact. And then analyzing 7 steps to measuring what impact is, and then storytelling, some resources, and then we'll close it out with questions. So to get us started, I wanted to just discuss a few different things. So basically we'll need everyone's microphone muted, but we'd also love for you to introduce yourself in the chat and let us know where you're coming from. Do you all hear me okay? Okay, so I'm gonna need Janessa, if you can, just let me know that that you can hear me well and that I'm clear.
Yes, Ankisha, we can hear you. But then I think it's the network. Sometimes it breaks and then it comes back.
Okay, so I'll try to go a little bit more slow, just in case there's any lag in the connection itself.
All right.
So I wanted to take a moment to look at the project as a whole. We're working with partners to create tangible resources and outcomes that benefit people all around Ghana. And it's nice to see some familiar faces with us today. So thank you all for joining us. And to get us started, let's watch a clip from Marian Arthur. She's the programs coordinator for iSpace, and she's going to discuss a little bit about the impact made in terms of the geographic locations. One moment. Okay, so I'm having a little bit of an issue with the Okay, so there's a slight issue with the audio today, but basically I wanted to introduce you all to the video because this right here is really important to understand what the context is in terms of storytelling and then why it's important. So with that, it's important to understand how you do it so that your reach is there for the intended audience. And then so that you can also open up, create openings for other people to join, as long as like they're stakeholders, clients, beneficiaries, and then also team members, because these are the people who basically make sure that your impact can happen within the community that you're serving over time. So continuing with that, we're looking a little bit deeper into the RIC project. We see that each group has joined because we have both innovators, researchers, entrepreneurs, people from different academic backgrounds, and then also people who are just interested in the topic itself. So everyone has joined because of their different needs. Maybe someone wanted to participate in an activity to boost the ecosystem with their expertise, or they have a concept that they've been working on, but they've encountered challenges and they needed additional support. So they came to iSpace. Or it could be that they wanted to expand their network. In any case, understanding why your target group and investors are present is important to figure out what impact matters to them. And then also what industry, and then also what industry, and then the team as well. So let's look at where does it matter. So there's two different ways that we could bring impact into our research, innovation, and business. When we're looking at research as a whole, there's both qualitative and quantitative research, but then there's also an emerging field that's being talked about that's basically been in existence for a very long time, and that is development research. And that's the work that a lot of entrepreneurs work in, because that right there is creating tangible products and services. And then that's essentially what the RIC project is. So in a nutshell, some focus directly on supporting impact or gender equality and social inclusion, while others focus on things that are more general, but they take the time to support Jesse and impact as well. And the key point in this is that each one matters and can make a difference, but they can also generate considerable revenue and investments as well. So there is no best option or one size fits all. Everything is unique based on the product and service that should have been developed based on the needs for the market, and then the things that are understood from the research in that. So now going into areas of impact. Areas of impact is something that is really important to understand, because essentially these are some of the categories. And when you look at the categories themselves, it gives you a better picture of what your venture or concept or project works on. And then so with that, I'm going to call it the context as well, instead of giving the options. And so there's environmental areas, community development, improved conditions, inclusivity, and then also connectivity. So to dive deeper into each one of those, some areas of environmental impact could be reducing greenhouse gas emissions, conserving water or other natural resources, protecting biodiversity, and then also reducing pollution. Some other things could be that are related to that would be that you could train children or people in the community about how to conserve resources, and then to make environmental impact where they are. Some community development areas include creating jobs and economic opportunities for people within the community, improving access to education and healthcare, providing affordable housing or safe housing, promoting social cohesion and inclusion, and then also safety. When we're looking at better conditions, basically that right there, it rides on the things that are in the other areas as well, but it also includes reducing poverty and inequality, making sure that there's better health and well-being. This is really important for mothers and then also children. in certain communities where those could be improved in terms of the healthcare services that are available. And then promoting gender equality and women's empowerment. So making sure that women and also people with disabilities or people from underrepresented communities are engaged and can basically make sure that they have decision-making opportunities and then also opportunities to create the things that they want to create for themselves and then also for others who are like them. When we're looking at inclusivity impact, basically that is ensuring that all people have access to opportunities and resources, regardless of where they're from, their gender, their orientations of sorts, their backgrounds, disabilities, and then other characteristics that could be identifiers that are sensitive sometimes. It's also promoting diversity and inclusion in the workplace and in society as a whole. So again, that can be seen as in making sure that women and then people with disabilities or people from other communities have access to different resources and then are also in roles that can make decisions and then also make change within the communities. Looking at connectivity, which is something that a lot of people focus on as well, that could be expanding access to data, access to roads, access to healthcare. But then there's also promoting digital literacy and then skills in the community for everyone from early childhood learning on up into adults. And so with those, it changes based on the demographic and the age of the people because their needs and then also their capacity and the time, and then other ways of that they would use it would be different. Another one would be reducing the digital divide and then connecting rural and underserved communities. So one local example of this was basically bringing data or electricity into rural communities that previously were underserved. So those are some examples. And then if you want to dig into it a little bit more, basically it could be providing Wi-Fi or digital literacy training to people, which is something that we're very familiar with. Providing access to healthcare. So this could be in community healthcare facilities, or making sure that the company is sourcing materials from sustainable suppliers. So that's just a few. And then they go into more detail based on what your particular context is, and then what your focus is in terms of the sector, and then the needs of the community and investors as well. Because you can measure a lot of things, but everything doesn't matter all the time. And so you want to make sure that you're picking up on things that are the key points and priority areas. So just to recap on that, some of the big social impact metrics that we see in this market is basically the number of people served, the number of jobs created, increased retention rates, a reduction in poverty or inequality, reduced environmental impact, and then increased utilization of services. So I pull these out because these are also the things that matter to funders a lot of times. So what we see is that with investors and funders, they want to see that you have traction, so that you're doing something, and then that you have a following. So making sure that you have an online presence in terms of the storytelling is important. But they also want to see that you have a client base of clients, customers, or beneficiaries. And these right here are the people who make use of it. And it also is a good indicator that the thing that you're doing is what matters and what is needed in the community as well. When we're looking at increased retention rates, that right there translates into the profitability of what you're doing. So you have this research or innovation or project idea, but you want to make sure that you can follow the customer acquisition process to make sure that you're getting customers, keeping customers, and then also adding on new ones in different ways. And then that should translate into the bottom line of what you're doing financially. It's easier to get additional funding or investments when you're able to show that you can operate in the black, meaning that you can operate where you're making a profit and then not using cost. Sometimes with things, you put a lot of money into the legal side in terms of IP protection, making sure that all of the different functions of the team and then also the strategy and structure of the organization are in place. And others require a large investment in terms of the technology itself, um, the technology, the infrastructure that's been used, and other things that are needed to create what is being commercialized. When you're looking at social investors, on the other hand, a lot of times they want to know, are you doing that, but are you also reducing poverty and inequality? So poverty and inequality, it works in twofold. So one is how you're doing it externally within the community that you're working with or the communities that you're working with. And the other side is with your own team. So are you paying wages that are fair market wages? Do you hire and promote individuals who are women or people who have disabilities? Are you making sure that the voice of everyone in your the context of your beneficiaries and then also your team is heard and reflected into the way that your company is operated and the way that it does business, the values, and also in the product or service that you're presenting in terms of the commercialized efforts? The other one is reduced environmental impact. This is really important, especially for manufacturing and agriculture businesses. So when you look at that, you can develop greenhouses, you can plant fields and acres or hectares of different crops or have different livestock depending on what you're doing, or manufacture different products in terms of various industries. But in the end, what exactly do you do with the output that is waste? Are you transforming waste to energy? Are you making sure that the waste that you produce within the context of what you're commercializing isn't harmful to the downstream community in terms of water runoff and then also impact of the communities that are served? And then if they are in some form or fashion, because it's very hard to have zero environmental risk if you're not doing something that is strictly within the realm of the service industry. You're looking at ways to make sure that you're measuring how to mitigate these risks within those areas as well. And so the last one that I have here is increased utilization of services. So this one could be general in terms of the services or products that you have, but then it could be something else. If you're doing something that is on a large scale, that has a potential to impact a lot of individuals. So are people going into a new market based on the work that you're doing? Are they able to stay in school longer? Are they able to access different services within those things that are essential? So healthcare, education, and the sorts like that. So these right here are things that are benefits to society that also matter directly to investors that will help you go from doing your pitch all the way through having negotiations and then being in a deal room with investors. And then if you're looking at nonprofit or grants to fund what you're doing, this right here could also take you from having a concept note into actually sending a proposal and then potentially getting funds. So now we're going to look at measuring social impact. So if you look at the picture, basically you see a completed building and then you see one that is under construction. The reason why we have this is because the way that you would do this would differ based on where you are in terms of your journey. If you have a context that is already existing, the thing that you would do is basically working with your team to create a strategy to integrate social impact into the operations management and then marketing of what you're doing, along with the product and service development. And in that way, you would have your design team, but you would also have the execution team, which sometimes is completely different from the team that was participating in the initial design. When you're looking at something that is currently under construction or being developed, that right there is a different context as well, because you would essentially have the ability to integrate it into the very DNA of what you're doing. So it's part of the culture, and then part of the design, and then part of every single aspect. And so you can look at the business model canvas if you want to consider the different aspects of what the concepts would do. And that would help you break it down in terms of both the cost and then also the profit side. Both the strategy and the execution are important and they matter. So even though one may start and the other may be long term, it's important to make sure that they both receive their check-ins and then that they can be engaged over time. So going into measuring the social impact itself, this right here is 7 steps. And so we're starting with defining the social impact. So that's looking at what those categories are. And I have the text here that we're asking because if you're looking at this after the fact, it'll be easier for you to jot it down and then also think about the things that matter and that are important to you over the time. So you're starting with defining the social impact. And when you're looking at that, you're going to ask questions like, what exactly does it mean in your context? So this is the context of your project, your venture, your concept, and then your organization. The other question is, what exactly are the goals and objectives? So you can start by saying this right here is a great idea. Everyone wants to have social impact, but why are you doing it? And then that right there should align with the why of why you're in operation. The other side of it is what exactly are the social issues that are most relevant to your business in terms of your business as an entity, the sector, and then also the stakeholders and potential investors. You want to make sure that you're measuring those and then that you've defined those in the beginning so that that way you keep those over time and then you carry them all the way through to the reporting and then storytelling that you're doing. The next one is identifying your stakeholders. So the big question here is who is affected by and interested in your activities? Those are your stakeholders. What do they need? What do they expect? If you keep it at those 3 questions, you'll have a very good ground foundation to get started on understanding your stakeholders. The third part is identifying your priorities. So you want to prioritize social and environmental issues that are the most relevant to your context and then also your stakeholders and potential investors. There's a lot of data that you can collect, but even though you can collect it, doesn't mean that it matters. And everything that you collect is essentially more time that's taken from your partners and then also your clients and other individuals that are participating in that. The fourth one is choosing your metrics. So you have the categories. So now you choose what indicators will you use to track and evaluate your progress. With this one, remember the cost associated with it. So there's a cost associated with all of this, especially when you're looking at what metrics you're tracking and then the ways that you're tracking it in the collect data part. When you're looking at metrics also, you want to also look at it in terms of the context of the objective and goal. Because if you're evaluating a particular question or you want to find out something, you want to make sure that you have metrics within that match up and can help you answer it. The next step is collecting data. So this could be surveys, interviews, focus groups. Those are very people focused, but then there's also the interactions with technology. So that could be collecting data from different sensors or from the prototype itself for understanding how many bugs your customers or the clients encountered if it's an application or if there were any breakdowns in terms of the hardware. So there's different contexts based on what you're doing. When we're analyzing it, what you're looking at is basically patterns, trends, and insights. The patterns, trends, and insights are the things that matter. And you want to make sure that you keep those to align with your objectives. But the outcomes could be different. There's expected outcomes, there's outcomes that are not expected, there's intended outcomes, and then unintended outcomes as well. They're different because basically when you're looking at things that weren't expected or are unintended, essentially that right there could change the way that you're operating. So they're really important to make sure that you keep those. And then even though they may not fit with the thing that you started out doing, they could help you create sustainability over time. So the last part here, we have a slight typo, so I'll update that. Is that you're going to do reporting. So reporting is really important for the storytelling aspect of it. So looking at storytelling, basically, the reason why we're doing that is because we want to share impact. So going back to the initial video of Marion, the program coordinator, sharing the information about the work that the RIC project is doing. Basically, you want to make sure that you're getting what you're doing out. The impact is there in terms of the different indicators that you have, and then that you're telling the story of the growth that you have, the work that you're doing, and the results in terms of the people who you're interacting with, so that the customers and the community and the investors have an understanding and a clear picture of what's going on, and then can guess and estimate what the future would be. Within that, a really important point when you're looking at storytelling is that every story has a different perspective based on the listener. When you think about a beach ball, for example, so a beach ball is a ball that has different stripes. And then when you look at the organization, essentially every single department has a different color. So you might have the executive team in blue, the communications and marketing team in white, the finance team in red, and then the actual coordination and then execution within the community as the yellow. And so the perspective of what they have, even though they're different, it's all based on the same thing. But the way that they would tell it and the way that they would have information collected and then share it with them will be different based on the context of what you need, of what they need. And so when you look at that in terms of the investment groups or potential investors, you want to get an understanding of who those investors are, what they've invested in over time, so that you can understand their track record in terms of the projects, businesses, and then also the amounts as well. If you can find that information either online or through a conversation with someone who is on the team, and then that'll help you understand how to frame what you're sharing so that you share the story, but you understand that you're also hitting the key points of the things that matter to them. And then they'll be more likely to listen and then ask additional questions and then continue the conversation. Storytelling is also important because even though we live in a market where a lot of things are done after a pitch, when you're looking at the larger context, after you go from angel investment all the way up to Series A and B, basically the way that you tell the story changes and who you're telling it to changes. So you might go from having a group to different individuals in one-on-one conversations, and then other perspectives as well. So now, looking at resources, big questions are what tools will you use? There's a lot of different indicators that you can have in terms of like the social aspect or finance or operations. But the ones that I wanted to talk to you about today are essentially focused on the social side because that's what brought us here. And so we have IRIS, which is basically standardized metrics that describe social, environmental, and financial performance of organizations and businesses. And then that's focused on impact investment capital. And then there's the GEN, so the Global Impact Investment Network. And then that right there also has a group of tools and frameworks that help you develop and implement impact management systems. And it's also really good to identify and measure impact and setting targets and tracking progress as well. And then looking at the social return on investment. So this right here is basically a framework and then tools that help businesses measure the social and the economic impact of the things that they're doing. So it could be used to compare the value of different investments and then also to demonstrate the value of social impact to investors. The last part of this is that people matter. So when you're looking at people, the people are your team and then also the clients and beneficiaries. So I left off the potential investors because even though they also matter, they're an entirely different group. So you're collecting information using your team. So the team would include people who are primary and secondary like sources for the data. And these are people who would develop the ways that you would do that, actually do the data collection, and then looking at the different systems and frameworks that you have. And so it's people focused, but then it's also technology focused. The other side of that is that you have your clients and beneficiaries. So these are the people that help you make money, because they are buying your products, goods, or services, or in some fashion. And so you want to be able to get feedback from them, and then interact with them in a way that doesn't take up a lot of time, lets you get information that's relevant, and then also is a right fit for what you're doing. All right, so that brings us to the very end of our conversation today. We just covered how does commercialization benefit society. And this right here was the last part of the commercialization series. So we're gonna open it up for questions now, so that way you can ask anything that you would like. And then you can also share your experiences, or feedback about the series itself. I know that we're scheduling some meetings and appointments with a couple of people who are on the call today. So if you would like to be included in that, or if you need additional information, just type it in the chat so that Janessa can collect your information. Or you can just speak and then tell us a bit about what you're doing, or any questions that you may have. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Akisha. Thank you so much. Kindly put up your hands.
Thank you.
Yeah. Kindly put up your hands if you would want to talk, or if you have any questions that you would like to ask. Matthias, did you want to talk?
No, please.
Okay, so I'm going to take it that all the questions that everyone had today were answered. But then if there's anything that comes up over the next couple of days or weeks, you can feel free to reach out on iSpace's social media, and then also with our team members, or you can connect with me directly if you have any particular questions. Let's see. Okay, so I think that now I'll pass it back to our team so that
Hello?
way we can
I
close it
think
off.
I've raised my hand, but I think you've not seen it.
Okay,
Oh.
yes.
Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Yeah. I'm talking about the benefit of the social impact. For instance, I'm into pharmaceuticals and then some few other businesses that I do. And one of the things I do for my community is that, like, every quarter and every year, I calculate the profit I have and then look at the less privileged in the area. For instance, just about 3 weeks ago, I happened to do a medical outreach for the KIAs, and then that's of the truck pushers and the trotro mates who sleeps in the market. Just basically just to help them to be able to alleviate the issue of their health and then provide the necessary need for them. I got doctors and pharmacists and got some nurses and got some dentists to just try to see how best you can help them with their issue, because most often than not, when you're sick, they go to the drugstore and go and get the medication. So what I did was to just see how best they can come to the consulting room with the doctors, have engagement with them, and tell them their problems. In that regards, I'm trying to solve an issue called trauma, because most of them are going through this challenge because they feel like they couldn't make it in the academic ladder, so they can't do it. So I get people people who have made it in life. Like maybe, for instance, I'm just giving an example. Maybe yourself, Kwame Despite, who some time ago, the owner of Peace FM and OKFM, who has multiple of business around, was just a normal person who was selling rice, this rice called Angwamo and pepper, and selling CDs, and look at where he has gotten to. So in this particular way, we are using medical screening because of we are pharmacists and how do you call it, chemists. We use our products to be able to do this thing for the community. Can we say this one is an impact story that we are making the community that is benefiting the community? That we can get maybe how do you call it, support to be able to enlarge this one or get our business being effective in the area. I have a bit of a restaurant. Sometimes I cook food for the less privileged when it's on holidays. Maybe there's a Christmas, there's Easter, there's Salah, and then the people who are begging by the roadside, I just prepare food because I'm involved in restaurants, which I cook food and then share to the people. Can I say that this one is a social impact I'm making in the community, or is a misplaced thing I'm saying? Thank you.
So that right there is definitely an impact. So it's along the line of corporate social responsibility, where you're taking part of the funds that you generate over the course of the year, and then you're using that to create an impact. So it definitely matters. And a lot of times, when people are supporting different ventures, sharing that you do that helps them understand why it's important to frequent your organization, and then also to support it because you do give back to the community, and then that's the way that they can support. Yeah, so that right there is it definitely matters. It's a corporate social responsibility that you've taken on, and it sounds like great work in different areas. So great work.
So next week, can I engage you further and maybe give you some? I have a newsletter I write every year based on the corporate social responsibility I do for the community with some friends from the United States of America, and it's not the results of the resources that I get, profit I get. Can I engage further, maybe to share some of the things with you, maybe personally or with your team, and see whether there's anything viable in that can be of benefit to anything that I can assess with. Thank you.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that are you setting up a meeting with our team for the upcoming weeks?
I didn't get you. Can you repeat what you said, please?
Yeah, so I wanted to know if you were setting up a meeting already with someone on our team to discuss some other areas as well.
I guess that's like I've shared my thoughts with you, and I feel like we have a further engagement. So I put it in the chat box. I want to engage further and see what I do for my community and what I do for myself as a young philanthropic. And I feel like I should give whatever thing I have to the community that I was brought up to, because I was privileged by God's grace to get to where I am, and I think I have to give back to my society. So I think I wanted to get a further engagement and see whether there's something that's in it that falls into what we are discussing today. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, it does. It does fall into it. So that's definitely doing an impact on community development. So basically, with what you're doing, it sounds like you're improving access to healthcare and in healthcare systems, and then also helping people have a greater poverty reduction over time. And so I think that if you build on that to make it so that it's part of maybe a training or a service line that supports the people that you engage during those times, then that could be something that builds on the impact, as long as it doesn't require an extensive cost, because you still want to make sure that you're profitable while you're having an impact in the community.
Okay, so I'll leave my number in the chat box. If there's anything that you can reach out, you can leave your number in the chat box, or any way you can reach out to me so that we can further engage. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Abdul. Thank you, Atisha. If there's no further questions, like we always do, I would like us to put on our cameras so that we can take a quick photo and then we'll begin.
Oh, Janessa, you're muted.
So sorry. I was saying that Papa, when you're ready, let me know. I think Desmond hand is up. Desmond, kindly go ahead.
All right, thank you so much. I I want to know the social impact, should it always be relevant to what you do, or you can maybe make the social impact just like Abdul's initiative. He's into the health sector. Okay. So should his social impact always be aligned to the health sector, or he can go into something like education? Yeah.
Okay. So there's different ways that we can make an impact. And so sometimes the things that we do in terms of the project or the business that we have is directly supporting a social impact. But then other times, if you don't have a context that has a direct support, then you can integrate impact into the way that you do business and then also in the way that you execute it. So you could do things such as developing a new line or supporting different types of groups or making sure that you have representation on your team with women or people from different communities based on the representation. So based on the representation that you have in your company. So there's different ways. It would just depend on what your focus is in terms of the community of what you're doing in terms of the organization itself, and then how you're doing that. So thank you for that. That was a really good question.
Thank you, Atisha. Papa, please, are you here? Kali, please, are you done? Okay. All right. Thank you so much for joining today. We have a couple of panel sessions coming up, and more details on that will be shared once we have your emails and your numbers, and so we'll give you details on that. I just want to use this opportunity to thank you all for joining throughout these past 4 weeks, and we will meet again. Have a good afternoon, everyone.